Today, we're going to talk about why sales feels hard right now. And with just a few simple tweaks, you can actually go from hating sales, freaking out, getting anxious, and all that sort of stuff around a sales call. Just these tiny few tweaks will actually have you looking forward to sales calls, will definitely help you close more. And honestly, it'll keep you out of like all these crazy funnels and strategies and all that sort of stuff. In fact, you won't have to necessarily persuade or handle objections much at all. I'm going to give you the 7 tips that I have basically learned to as someone who has sold over $1 million worth of products and services, but never actually been a salesperson. And by the way, my name is Colby. If you haven't actually followed me before, you're landing here for the first time. I run this community called Autonomy Club. It's for agency owners, freelancers, solopreneurs who are done building with complexity, don't want to manage a ton of people. What they do want is high lifestyle, high profit, right? And so we use something called the U+2 model, which is just them, a virtual assistant and a content assistant, to where they can add a ton of flow and blank space on their calendar. So let's dive in. All right, so tactic 1 is basically the setup, actually making sure that this person's going to be worth your time to begin with. A lot of people, they'll hop on sales calls, and maybe in the beginning it's totally fine. You need the reps, especially if you have a new offer or you're new to the space or whatever. But a lot of people will hop on and think that I can sell almost anybody, or I should sell almost everybody. And that's just categorically false, right? So one of the first things that really changed it for me was, instead of I need to sell the person, I need to learn if they're a fit. And you can start doing that pretty quickly, even before you get on the call. So like I said, I have coffee chats, but in the past, when I was doing sales calls on my Calendly booking page, I would actually ask them more or less 3 questions. The first question was, what is the actual problem they need solving? The second question is, would they be a financial fit? And then the third question would be, are they a timing fit, right? And so on the financial side of things, as an example, I would basically ask something like, whatever my service was, say it was like $2,000 a month or something like that. I would ask the question, are you willing to invest $1,500 a month in whatever the desired outcome is, that kind of thing, right? And the reason I did $1,500 is because if they are at least in the ballpark, then after talking to me, I can give them enough value to where $2,000 a month seems very, very easy, right? If they're willing to spend $1,500 a month on themselves before they get any value from me or know anything about it, then that means like once they've talked to me for 20 minutes, they're going to know that, hey, this is infinitely more valuable. 2,000 kind of seems like a no-brainer, and we can kind of get into the no-brainer stuff later, right? But the point of this is basically like, if you don't actually qualify them ahead of time, where you have a Calendly page for them to book a call and they're just able to get in, and you have no idea whether they have $0, $100, $10,000. The long story short is like, get to know them a little bit. So I find qualify the problem, qualify the investment ability, and then qualify the timing ability. So timing ability can be like, how long have you been trying to solve this problem? That kind of thing. All right, tactic 2 is something that I honestly, like, I was coached to kind of dumb this down a little bit and get even more streamlined with this, but I didn't find that aligned with me, especially because I feel most sales calls, when it comes down to it, it's an education opportunity. It's a learning opportunity, right? You're there to understand what they really need, not convince them that they should pick you. And we'll talk about that later as well. But what I mean by that is that typically on a sales call, say it's an hour long, you'll have 15 minutes of discovery, 15 minutes of pitching, and then 15 minutes of objection handling. And then if you need the extra 15 minutes because you went over a little bit, you'll do that, right? But for me, I found that the longer I spent in discovery, where all I'm doing is asking open-ended questions, the more open-ended questions I would ask, the easier it would be for me to identify what's the true problem, right? There's this Japanese concept of asking why 5 times. And many times someone would say, why are you here on this call? Well, I was interested in your service. Why are you interested in my service? Well, I need more clients. Why do you need more clients? And then you just kind of get in there. But ultimately, you learn that the first thing they say very rarely is actually what's going on, right? And so the mechanism I use, I would spend a little bit more time in discovery. I would ask so many open-ended questions, not just on the business side, but on the personal side as well. Hey, do you have a spouse? What do they think about this? Not to be invasive, but to just literally make sure that if I'm going to spend time on this call and I do think we're a good fit, I don't want to have invested all of that time to get to the end and be like, well, I got to check with my boss, or I got to check with my wife, or I got to do all that sort of stuff, right? You want to kind of learn the level of empowerment of the person on the call. And if you learn that they're not the decision maker or that they do have to run something by somebody, that's something you can handle pretty early, actually, in which case I always recommend getting that person on the call. I've been on sales calls in the past where it has been like a husband, wife on the call, hearing the same message, because you're going to be able to deliver the message way better than the person who needs to check with the person, right? So during discovery, what I would say is take insane notes. Whether you have a pitch deck or not, in the beginning, I would just ask people questions, and then on my other monitor, I would be just writing vigorous notes, bullet points in a Google Doc, right? Whatever works for you. All right, tactic number 3 is going to be basically telling them why it won't work. And I know this seems kind of backwards, but if you can get into the mindset of that you are there to qualify them if they'll be successful in what you offer versus them qualifying you to see if they want to pay you, that's where this becomes quite easy, right? Because if you're in there thinking like, hey, whether they're a fit or not, I need to be on stage, I need to get this sale, that's going to basically make you poorer decisions, let's just call it, right? You're going to decide on things that aren't actually in alignment. And that's where, as someone who deeply believes in retention and relationship building, that front end money is not worth it to me if my gut's telling me like, oh my God, they're going to be a high maintenance client, or I've had to explain this 6 different ways and they still don't get it. It's fine. Do what you want to do. For me, I really don't like convincing. I can't honestly say I'm good at it, right? And so I want the sale where it's like they're on board. It's a full body hell yes. Yeah. So I find one of the best ways to do it, one of the best mechanisms, is telling them what won't work, right? And so just when I had SEO clients in the past, search engine optimization, first of all, your boss is basically Google. It's not the client, right? And I didn't have a paycheck from Google, which means I had to play by their rules. And so what I would do on calls is I would lay out all the possibles of being like, hey, this is going to take a long time. If we don't get content approved, there's basically no point. Like, this is what you need to commit to. Here's all the reasons it won't work if you don't commit. If you think that I can just call Google up and say, rank my client, like, I'm just laying out all these things. The more and more you can explain to them what could come up or why it won't work, the less surprises on the tail end. And you'll actually kind of be able to judge their ability to stomach that, right? If they are like really, body language is everything. If they're really like, ugh, this doesn't sound good, that's a good time to walk away. One of the best sales tactics I can give you, not on this list, is being willing to walk away from the money, because I want you to think further ahead. Don't think about, can I get this money now? How can I get 10 times this money later, because it's been such an amazing relationship and they stuck around. Tactic 4, when you get to the pitch stage. Now, generally these things go of like discovery. Like I said, mine lasts a lot longer, so 20 to 30 minutes even. When I get into the pitch phase, I feel fully comfortable that I have all the information I need to actually align my offer to what they need solved, essentially. And there's going to be a really, really good tactic number 7. You're going to want to stick around for that when you're doing the pitch. But in terms of the pitch, just general broad strokes, there's this amazing line by Myron Golan, who the moment I heard it, I was like, I need to find a way to behave that way. And he goes, what is the best way to handle objections? Don't have any. And so instead of doing the whole pitch, here's what we do, here's how it works, here's about, like, you talk so much about you, I will tell them throughout the step-by-step process of how I think my offer will help them solve their problem. After every single step, I've even been called out on it numerous times by prospects, is I will ask for clarification. What isn't making sense here? Is there anything that you don't agree with? Can you tell me what's unclear? Like, all that sort of stuff after every single step, which means if I'm doing it correctly, I will probably ask that question at least 10 times, if not 20 or 30 times, because the best way to handle objections is not have any. And I would much rather have them tell me what isn't working with the things I'm telling them during the pitch than waiting to the end when money's now on the table. Tactic number 5. This is going to be a fun one. It takes a little bit of time to master and all that sort of stuff, but essentially make them sell your service to them. You're not the salesperson anymore. If you go into the actual call and say, I am a guide, not a hero. I'm here to educate, not to convince. I am here to give them the next right step, whether it's with me or without me. If you can adopt that mindset, you immediately go into the mode of, I am here to qualify whether you will be successful in my offer. My offer is successful. That's not up for debate. I'm here to decide if you'll be a good fit for it, right? And a lot of this is more intuitive just in the language and that sort of stuff. But you can say like, here's the personality profile of the person that does really, really well here. Here is, a group of people that we've helped in the past who are going through similar stuff to you. Which things with that do you identify? All that kind of stuff. So it's kind of like peppered throughout the actual call. But if you do it well, by the end, because you've had the energy of I'm qualifying you, you're basically saying, well, it's basically a full-bodied yes from me. What do you think? Tell me where you want to go, that kind of stuff. And in almost every case, even if you say, well, I'm not sure it'll work this way, based on something you said, I'm not positive that you will be successful with this, that kind of stuff, you'll actually start hearing them convince themselves and start pitching to you why they would be successful. Now, keep in mind, you're not on stage. You can control the knobs and the dials whenever you want, right? So if they don't convince you well enough that they would be successful, you should not have that person come on as a client. But if they make a compelling argument that, yep, they're going to put in the work, they're committed to it, they are just as responsible, if not more so, for their results than you, now you've got something. And that I already kind of teased it a little bit. Tactic 6 is at the end of it, once you go from discovery to pitch, once your pitch is done, instead of going straight into, and here's what it costs, let them lead. One of the best ways to actually create this goodwill around closing a sale and having the money not feel icky and all that sort of stuff is saying, okay, well, this was, just an education. This was for me to learn a ton about you, for me to just basically explain how I would go about helping you based on what you told me. And so my portion is done. I've learned what I did. I told you what I think I would do. Where do you want to go from here? If you can at all possible, let the person on the other side feel like they're in control, even though every single thing you're doing is being in control, you're having guided questions, it will be much easier for them to actually want to work with you, because you're not just hammering down their throat that you're amazing, that your solution is the only one out there. You're actually saying, hey, this whole thing was just an education for both of us. I learned a ton about you. You learned a ton about what we do. Where do you want to go? And in almost every case, if you do your job well, they will say, well, I feel like I have everything I need. I would love to know what it costs. And so tactic number 7, this is, I think, the most elite thing I learned from any of those coaches' courses on sales and all that sort of stuff, and made every dollar worth it, because I didn't use this before, and then it immediately made things better. But again, well, I don't really do sales calls anymore, and I don't really have any objections when I bring up my offer and that kind of stuff, because it's very much like, hey, I'm just telling you what I'm doing. You get to decide if it's for you or not. And you did a really good job taking notes. You're going to have all of these things, exact quotes coming out of their mouth, right? And so if you get to the point where you say the investment and they kind of scoot back a little bit, right? Maybe it just wasn't in their actual mind, or it just seems like a big, big number. Most of the time, that's when the objections will show up, and they'll say, oh, it's just not the right time, or, oh, I feel like maybe this just isn't for me right now. I actually want something else. This statement is the most powerful statement you can use if you have to handle objections. And it goes in line with the last one, let them lead. By taking all those notes in the beginning, you get to say, remember when you said. So in the discovery phase, someone's been saying they've been trying to solve this problem for 2 years. They still haven't found anything to do it. They tried this, this, and this, and you write all those notes down. And then when it comes to you sharing your price and they're like, whoa, that's really big, I just think now's not the right time, you get to go back to the original and not say, well, when is it ever the right time? You actually get to go back and say, remember when you said you've been trying to solve this for 2 years? So what about now not being the right time makes it seem like you're willing to go another 2 years not to solve this, right? Like as an example, again, I don't really handle objections, but remember when you said is one of the most powerful statements, because there's no guarantee you get the sale. The best closers in the world still fail more than they succeed. But the last thing you should be doing in the moment of handling objections is putting them on the spot and telling them how they should behave. They already told you how they are behaving. Just remind them of it. So when it comes to handling objections, remember when you said is probably the most powerful frame you can use. So thanks so much for stopping by. If you got value out of this video, I have that community called Autonomy Club. We got freelancers, agency owners, solopreneurs in there. And when it comes down to it, every single one of them is trying to build a mission, purpose-led business that allows them more blank space on their calendar, more freedom, flexibility, by just using them, a virtual assistant and a content assistant, with one offer for one perfect fit person who gets to stick around for years because they vibe with who you are, right? You retain them and it's easy and it's light. And so if you want more details on that, you can find that in the description below. Otherwise, thank you again so much for your time, your energy. I appreciate you, and I cannot wait to see you in the next one.